Are you the type that's always been told that you look younger than your actual age? Or maybe you've been told the opposite, that you look more mature for your age. I know that in today's society, the pressure on women to stay looking young for as long as possible seems almost perverted to some extent. But what I'm talking about is a little bit different from physical or biological age. It has more to do with the overall impression of our faces and how we come across as regardless of our age. Me, for example, in my teens and my younger adult years, I've always been told that I look a little bit older than my age. And now that I've entered my mid-30s, there's definitely less assumption that I'm older physically, but people still say that I have that mature look to me, if that makes sense. So in this video, I want to explore the question, what are the physical traits that give our faces either a more youthful or a more mature impression? Because I think that having an understanding of which side we lean towards can provide some good insights on what kinds of styles suit our inherent impression. So today we're going to talk about what kinds of facial characteristics make a face appear either more youthful or more mature, and you can follow along to see which of these traits you have or don't have and how they might influence your overall impression and your style choices. So how I came about this topic idea is actually from some of my clients. What I've noticed is that clients that have more mature traits often express their concerns about wanting to look more youthful. But those that actually have very youthful looking faces want the opposite. They actually want to look more mature because they want to be taken more seriously. Maybe this is just a normal human tendency to wonder if the grass is truly greener on the other side, but I thought that talking about these traits one by one in more detail would be helpful not only in understanding our own selves visually, but also in breaking down some of the stigma around looking a certain type of way. You can have a more mature look to you and still be beautiful, just like how looking more youthful can also be beautiful in its own way. It took me a long time to start really appreciating my mature features for what they are, and I find it to be quite liberating because all my life I've been told that having a more youthful look is just better. But having a more mature look also comes with its own set of charms, you know? So I just want to emphasize that we're not talking about which side is better or worse here, but we're just making objective observations so that we can use them as a tool in understanding ourselves better and developing our style further. So from what I've been observing with my clients, a lot of factors related to facial age, for the lack of a better term, comes down to whether the face has a more prominent length or a prominent width. Because a human face grows longer as we age from a baby to a child to an adult, our eyes inherently recognize longer faces as being older and shorter faces as being younger. Now, facial length is an obvious trait, but there are also some other characteristics that play a role, one of them being the distance between the eyes and the lips. Like I said, our eyes inherently recognize longer faces as being more mature, but how our eyes perceive facial length also has to do with the distance between our facial features. That's why if you have a longer mid-face, or the middle third as I like to call it, or if you have features like a long philtrum, these characteristics make the distance between the eyes and the lips further apart, which our eyes then recognize as having a longer face. And opposite to that, if you have a short face, or if you have features like a short nose, a short philtrum, a high forehead, these are all factors that shorten the distance between the eyes and the lips visually. Because our eyes have a tendency to always move from top to bottom, if this distance, this blank space of the face here, if this area is shorter, then our overall facial length also appears shorter. And if we think about the proportions of a baby's face again, they have a much shorter distance between the eyes and the lips than adults do, right? Another characteristic that also has an influence is the distance between the eyes. The wider the distance between the eyes, the more our gaze is drawn in a horizontal direction. And this visual effect gives the face a more relaxed impression overall, and it also highlights the width of the face more. And if you think about it the opposite way, closed-set eyes tend to draw more attention towards the center of the face, where the face is the longest. So naturally, the more the length of the face is highlighted. So what it comes down to is not only the actual length or the width of the face, but also the visual effects of our facial proportions and which direction, either vertical or horizontal, our eyes are naturally drawn towards. If you're thinking, well, I have a long face, but I still get told that I look younger, or I have a short face, but I still look more mature, some other characteristics that also have an influence are the shape of the chin and facial fat. Like I said, the longest part of our face is down the center, so the sharper the shape of the chin, the longer the face appears overall. On the other hand, the more rounded the chin, the shorter the face appears and the more the width of the face is accentuated. In a similar way, fullness in the cheeks gives the lower face more width, whereas taut cheeks accentuate more of a V shape in the lower face, which again highlights the length of the face more. If we think about a baby's face again, their cheeks are much fuller, softer, and rounder, and so is their chin than an adult's, so naturally we make that mental association. Here's an example with the Hadid sisters. I have an older video about them, and I didn't know that Gigi was the older sister until I made that video. I'd always just assumed that Bella is the older one. And if we look at their faces closely, the features that we just talked about, the facial length, the shape of the chin, and the fullness in the cheeks, those are the major differences between these two faces. Now, facial features also play a role, and comparing the facial features of a baby to an adult is obviously helpful because we naturally make those associations in our heads like we talked about, but considering the yin and yang characteristics of the features can also be helpful. Yin is characterized by softness and roundness, and yang is characterized by straightness and sharpness. And if we think about the facial features of a baby, they're definitely rounder, smaller, and softer. So rounder shapes in the eyes, nose, and mouth contribute to a more youthful looking face, while more straight and sharp features have the opposite effect. If we use myself as an example, I have a long face, a sharp chin, a pretty taut cheeks, and a long filled trunk. My nose and lips have a rounder and softer appearance to them, but my eyes have a bit more of a horizontally elongated shape, so they carry more of that yang characteristic. So I do have some rounded and soft features, but predominantly I have a face where the length and straightness are highlighted much more within the face. Now, at this point you might be thinking, aren't these just such obvious things we're talking about? And I know that I just use myself as an example and I'm a pretty easy case to tell, but for other cases, it might not be so obvious when you put everything together collectively. So you might have a face like mine where it's very easy to tell that the face appears more mature, or you might have a very obviously youthful face, but you might also be the case where some features accentuate the length and sharpness while others don't, and it becomes less clear which side of the spectrum you lean more towards. For those of you that watch my videos regularly, you know I love referring to everything being on a spectrum because these things are not just black and white or just one way or another, so the answer may not always be so clear-cut. But having a general understanding of whereabouts on the spectrum we sit can help explain why certain styles we've tried before just felt a little off or felt like we're not wearing our own clothes. I think another question to ask ourselves is, do we want to find styles that harmonize with our outer appearance, or do we want to create more contrast and juxtaposition through our styles? My personal preference for myself leans towards more mature styles that harmonize with the inherent impression of my face. So that means I lean more towards straight lines and silhouettes, simple and very minimal details, and more structure in the garments, and I generally stay away from conventionally girly details like frills, big and poofy silhouettes, small and ornate patterns, any sort of light pastels, and also any kind of styles that are overly colorful or too streetwear or tomboy-like from head to toe. I generally avoid those as well. Because for me, I feel quite childish and clownish in these types of attire, and I feel like these styles don't match my exterior self or who I am on the inside. So my preferences have been shaped over time to steer away from those styles naturally. But on the other hand, if you feel like how you come across on the exterior doesn't necessarily match your personality, and you feel a strong need to express your inner self through your style, then maybe you might feel more at ease with styles that create that contrast against your natural impression. And you might find bigger fulfillment that way because your style choices express who you are on the inside, and that's the bigger priority for you. So there really is no right or wrong answer, but having that knowledge and awareness around how our exterior impression comes across as to others, I think it's definitely a helpful piece of information that we can use in continuing to develop our personal style that feels authentic to us, both inside and out. If you're thinking that this is very similar to the Kitchener essences, you are absolutely right. There are certain essences like ingenue or gamine where how youthful a face appears is an important factor that describes the essence. All I'm doing is breaking it down into more digestible pieces of information and also into more tangible measures, so that for those of you whose brains work more like mine, you can take this information and apply it in a way that makes sense to you in figuring out your essences and understanding what kind of impression your appearance naturally has. I hope you found the video helpful, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.